can you introduce yourself and what you do for us?
Sure. My name is Jess. I'm Claradacat on Twitch, and Twitter. Those are my only socials. But I am a video game attorney, slash content creator representative attorney.
Mhm.
So what that means is, I'm basically just a regular boring attorney, but all of my clients are really interesting because they're video game developers or content creators. So I do mostly intellectual property law and contract law, and I help video game devs and streamers and various kinds of content creators make sure that whatever deal they're signing is a fair deal. Just kind of help with, and then or I guess on the video game development side of things, I kind of help with anything that a video game dev might need in the legal space. So that might be independent contractor agreements, for bringing on an artist for one little part of your game. It might be a licensing deal so that the video game character from your game can get into another game or vice versa. So it's fun. It's always interesting. It's always different.
Mhm.
But I get to work with some really cool people.
That is awesome. Thank you for that rundown. That was super helpful. I think also with our call, I might change the format just a little bit
Okay,
compared to what I normally do. Where
sure.
I have a whole bunch of questions that I'm gonna ask you, my usual prep questions, but I do think that it could be fun to open up to chat for a Q&A session at the very end because
Sure.
I think a lot of people will have questions to go ask you because especially your job is so unique and it's something that like I feel like if creators don't know certain things, they could get into a lot of legal trouble. A lot of That's a good question, Impact. I have that on my list of questions to ask soon. So,
Oh, yep.
yeah. Okay, so my first question for you is I know you mentioned on your Twitter that you used to be a part of your practice. Just out of
Mhm.
curiosity, for like the lawyer, attorney, logistics side of it, how does one like be part of a practice? And is that like, does that take like do they take a percentage from you? Do you have to pay into that, etc.? Like, how does that look like?
That's a great question. Yeah. If you're part of a law firm, it depends on what level you're at in that law firm. So
Mhm.
for me, I was an associate at the law firm, which means I was basically like an employee. So I wasn't profit sharing. That happens if you're a partner that's higher
Mm.
up. That means you're potentially a partial owner of the firm. So in my case, I had some of my own clients that I found through actually basically through Twitch. I was part of one streamer's community while I was in law school. We became buddies. He knew I became a lawyer, asked me to look at some contracts, and then he has since referred me to other people, or referred other people to me, I should say, which
Mhm.
has been really great. So that's how I grew my own clients. But being part of the firm, I had managing attorneys who ranked higher than me, who had
Mm.
client work that they needed help with. So they would give me assignments. I would help on those. I would talk to our clients. Depending on the situation, sometimes I talk directly with the clients. Sometimes I just talk to the managing attorney. But yeah, so being part of a law firm, there's sort of different layers of
Oh, okay.
seniority. So I was the low man on the totem pole. I was down at the bottom. But yeah, I recently left and I've started my own practice, which for me just means I'm going solo. So it's
Mhm.
just me and my clients, and working on growing and helping more and more creators. And it's been a really good transition.
What made you want to leave a practice or like the practice you were at and go solo?
Sure. Mostly the flexibility. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's the reason a lot of people leave a company and go to like sort of the gig style, right?
Mhm.
Like I think video editors might be a good example, right? Where you could work for maybe some kind of production company, or you could work for yourself and do video editing for lots of different people. And it's a little scarier because you don't
Mhm.
have an employer who's writing you a paycheck every couple weeks, but you have the flexibility to work with who you want to, set your own rates, set your own schedule. So for me, those were the two big things: setting my own schedule and setting my own rates. Because the
Mm.
clients I want to work with, and sorry if I am rambling on and on,
No,
please cut
rambling
me
is
off.
good because
Okay,
you're like providing information I didn't even know to ask for, if that makes sense. Because I don't know like
awesome.
anything about the logistical side of this like working in law and any like thing like that. I don't know anybody who works in it.
Sure, sure. No, that's totally fair. But yeah, so for me, I really wanted to be able to work with smaller creators
Mhm.
who frankly can't afford big law firm bills. Big law firms charge a lot of money for a single hour of their time. Um, and I was feeling a little bit restricted by that in a
Mm,
way that just wasn't driving with what I ultimately wanted my career to look like and where I wanted to be spending my time. So going solo has let me set my own rates, which has mean which has meant that I've been able to work with smaller creators who don't have thousands of dollars to spend on legal fees, but
mhm.
they still have important rights that should be protected in their contracts. So it's been really cool to get to have that flexibility as well.
Awesome. So out of curiosity for your rates, so let's say I don't even know what services are offered, so feel free to like give more info, but like what about for like a 1 hour call or if a creator has a contract they want you to look over? How much would each of those charge? And like other services you offer because I don't even know what is in this realm.
Sure. No, great questions. Yeah, so it's going to depend situation to
Okay.
situation. So right now, my hourly rate is $200 an hour, and that can get you quite a lot of work depending on the project that you need help with. So Um, for example, without giving like any client
Yeah.
information, I helped someone with an independent contractor agreement. They were
Okay.
going to be working for a company, doing something in the content creation space as an independent contractor. And so that was a roughly 10-ish page contract. Um, so in that case, I'm reading through it to find any place that the company might be overreaching in what they're
Mm.
asking for from the creator. They might be asking for too aggressive of a grab of name, image, and likeness rights. That's a really big one for content creators. Is the right to take your name, image, and likeness and use it for marketing purposes.
Mhm.
So to some extent, that needs to happen, right? If you're making content and your face is involved in that content, the company needs to have permission to go share that. That's what you're signing up for.
Mhm.
But what we don't want is them to be able to take your name, your image, your likeness, and go start training generative AI, right? Like, that's not what you're signing up for. So it's just making sure that what's in the contract is really what you're trying to sign up for and making sure that the creator understands what they're signing. And then if they're in a position so they have the leverage to negotiate, then we start talking about, okay, how would we change this contract? And I will draft a new version of it that changes some of the language to be more protective, maybe, or if they are willing to give up those rights, maybe they're asking for a little more money, right? If
Mhm.
you want to be able to take my voice and go use it in some other project, I'm going to want to be paid for that. So that's one example. So something like that, uh, that contract review and doing some revisions and a couple rounds of back and forth, that came out to around $500, give or
Okay.
take. So nothing crazy. And then, well, nothing crazy compared to law firms
Yeah.
because at some law firms that would run you $2,000 to $3,000. So I really do try to keep my rates more accessible.
Mhm.
Another example, a creator is was going to be making a TikTok for a
Mhm.
brand, and for that they weren't interested in changing the contract. They weren't interested in me like we call it redlining because we
Mhm.
just read all over the page, right? They weren't interested in the redlining process, but they wanted what I call a red flag review, which is
Okay.
where I read through it and I say, okay, here are your big ticket items. Here are the things that are most concerning to me when I read this. Or here are the things that aren't necessarily concerning, but if you're not a lawyer, you might not know what those words mean. They're just kind of weird.
Mhm.
So here's an explanation of what this actually means for you and your situation. And that was a 5-page contract. Just that red flag review, I did it for a flat 150. So the
Okay.
nice thing about being on my own is I can do that flexibility, right? I can do hourly if that makes sense. I can do a flat rate if that makes more sense.
Mhm.
And I can really work with the creator or the video game developer to figure out like what is going to meet both of our needs.
Out of curiosity, do you and again, I don't know anything about law. Would there be like have you ever done like pricing where it's a percentage of what the deal would be? And I'm speaking from this because my boyfriend is a pro player, so he has an agent and the agent functions like that, but of course you work differently than an agent where they will negotiate contracts for the players initially pro bono, but like in the end it's kind of like I will take X percentage of your deal that you do. Would that be
Yeah.
an option for creators who maybe like upfront don't have the money for it?
So that is not something that's commonly done in
Okay.
law, but it's actually something that I'm trying to bring in because I
Okay.
think I think there is a lot of room for overlap between what an agent does and what I can do. I just have like sort of the legal trained eye, right? And there are different things that lawyers are like legally allowed to do that
Yeah.
agents can't do, but agents can do a lot. I mean, they really can be highly valuable. Um, and so I've thought about that. I don't have any clients right now that are on that kind of a system, but it certainly is an option. And the legal equivalent that I can think of that like at least is done by people is called contingency fee.
Mm.
That tends to be in litigation, which litigation is what it's called when you actually go to court, you're going to trial, you're arguing, versus transactional is like business to business or creator to business, we're working on contracts.
Mhm.
So in litigation, contingency fees tend to be more in like personal injury cases, right? Somebody gets hit by a bus, horrible thing. Their lawyer goes to court, wins a big settlement from the bus company. They get a percentage
Okay.
of that win. So that's the closest thing that currently is common in law.
Mhm.
But I certainly, I mean, I'm young, I'm progressive. I like the idea of doing something really flexible like that, where it's like,
Mm.
hey, I can't pay you right now, but if I make it big, we could both really like
Yeah.
be in a good spot. I
Mhm.
love that idea.
Awesome. And just, before we get into, like, more of the creator-specific questions, out of curiosity for anybody who's interested in doing what you do, like, how much schooling did it take for you to get to this point? And work
Good
experience?
question. Yeah, great question. So I let's see. I mean, I went like
Mhm.
K through 12 high school, right?
Yeah.
And then college. I got my bachelor's degree in political science. And then I went to law school, and law school is 3 years.
Okay.
So all in all, for like the after high school schooling, you're looking at 7 years of school between 4 years of undergrad, 3 years of law school. Then I was in law firms. I was in two different law firms, but I was in law firms for a little over a year, and then I decided I could go solo. That is earlier than most people.
Okay.
I am lucky in a couple ways. I'm married. I have the support of my husband, so we are in a position that we could kind of take this leap and do this solo thing. And I also already have a couple of my own clients, and that's not super common this early in your career. So I would say a more realistic timeline would be 3 to 5 years working at a law firm, then going solo, because at that point you're more likely to have your own clients.
Got it. So it's more so, like, when you have that clientele that you can leave rather than, like, X amount of years at a law firm.
Yeah, I'm technically speaking, once you graduate law school, you can go straight into solo practice. There's
Oh,
nothing
okay.
stopping you. Legally, like you're it. You're a lawyer through and through. You can go do it. It's just it tends to be tougher, right? If
Okay.
you don't have a way to meet the people you're trying to work with.
Got it, got it, got it. Now I have some creator-specific questions, and these are ones that or actually, you know what? I'll combine these. I'm just trying to figure out, like, the formatting because I've never done a Q&A before, but I do wanna open the Q&A because I'm sure people will be interested. I'll do that towards the end of the interview, though. First question related to creators. What are some things you wish creators knew, especially in, like, the legal space?
Ooh, great question. I actually just tweeted about this the other day.
Ooh,
So follow me on Twitter.
I am
I
stalking
wish
your Twitter for
creators.
questions, by the way, so this is probably where I got the idea from.
Oh, I love that. You also definitely saw like way too many dumb posts. Fair warning, if you follow me on Twitter, it's mostly dumb. Like it's mostly silly. It's Twitter I started for because I started streaming recently just for
Yeah.
fun. Like it's very much a silly time. But it is a way to connect with me if you have legitimate questions too. But yeah, I would say the big things that creators should know are don't be afraid to ask questions. Even if you can't afford to have legal support at this point, Ask whatever brand you're working with, whatever company you're working with, whoever's on the other side of the contract that you're potentially signing. Don't be afraid to ask questions because that will tell you a couple of things. First, you want to make sure you understand what you're signing. That's huge, right? So you'll get more information, but it'll also tell you a little bit about the kind of people you're working with. If they're really impatient with your questions, if they're trying to push you through the process before you understand what you're signing, that can tell you a lot about the kind of company that you're going to be working with. So I would say the biggest one is don't be afraid to ask questions. Make
Mm.
sure you really understand what you're signing. And then the other would be don't be afraid to talk to your peers in your content creator space about what their deals look like. This shouldn't be a secretive hush hush kind of thing. In my opinion, creators' strength is in knowledge. And some of
Mhm.
that knowledge is, well, how much did you get paid for that? Or, well, what kind of deal did you sign? Or is it normal to have this in a deal? Lean on each other. I think that can be a really good source of information too. And then the last piece would be don't be afraid to reach out to a lawyer if you have a question. Even if the lawyer that you reach out to isn't the right fit for price reasons or industry reasons, maybe they don't specialize in what you're asking about, they probably know someone who can help. They might be able to
Mm.
refer you to someone who can help. So it's always better to ask. So I guess that's my big thing. Ask, ask, ask. Ask the company, ask your peers, ask a lawyer.
Got it. That's so good, honestly. I feel like so many creators are even, like, afraid not only are they afraid to go ask a lawyer because it's like, "Oh, scary," but it's also like, they don't even know who to go to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do they Google lawyers in my area, you know? So I think it's really
Yeah.
cool also that, like, you are building, like, a presence yourself as a content creator where people can kind of get exposure to, and they're like, "Oh, here's a creator that I know who also is a lawyer. Okay, like, you're more approachable. Like, maybe I can reach out if I have questions." That's so
Yeah.
great.
Thank
Another
you. I hope
one.
so. I
Mhm.
hope so. That's what I'm hoping for.
What are some things content creators can do to legally protect themselves?
That's a tricky question. I mean,
Okay.
it that no, no, no. It's a fine question. It's a good question. Because it really is going to be situation dependent, and that's the most annoying lawyerly answer to give. Is it depends. That's like a running joke among all lawyers. Is the answer to every
It's
question
okay. I
is it
interviewed,
depends.
like, influencer manager, and her and I were just joking the entire time because her I would ask her a question, and her answer was, "It depends," 'cause it truly is very situational. I think my question when I was writing this, I figured it's probably too vague too. Um, I had a couple of other, like, more specific ones that I could probably ask that might be a little bit better. So let's say, hypothetically, a lot of streamers like, they might use like IP in their artwork on their stream. So they might use some like Pokemon arts or they might use some like anime artwork. Would they be in legal realms of getting in trouble for using it for fun, in their content?
Potentially. I mean,
Okay.
again, this is gonna be annoying of me, but again,
Yeah.
it depends. It depends on what the use is.
Okay.
There's a concept in the law called fair use,
Mhm.
but there are some pretty particular requirements that have to be met. And basically, if you're in the fair use category, then it's not IP infringement to
Okay.
use someone else's work. But like I said, that can be tricky to know really whether you're in the fair use category or not. Um, but I would say, like, general rule of thumb, if you are going to be making money from it, you might be in dangerous territory.
So Twitch emotes would not be okay.
It's risky.
Yeah, because it's like people subscribe for it, and then okay. So you using your lawyerly advice, if a creator was thinking about doing it, would you just kind of tell them to not do that?
Yeah, I mean, it really would depend on. At the end of the day, that's a business risk decision,
Mhm.
and I can advise on how risky I think that is, and that's going to involve looking at well, again, like what kind of use you're doing. Are you transforming it? Is it inspired by? Or are you just
Okay.
straight up pulling it? And then I would probably look into are there ways that we can license it? Is there a way that for a small fee up front we can do this the right way and we can license to use that art? Um, and then you're fine because a license means you've got a deal with the creator of the IP that says, hey, you're allowed to use this for that purpose.
Mhm. Got it, got it. Kind of in the same boat. Oh, this actually happened to me. I don't know if this would tread into the space that you, like, cover because this is not really creator, it's more into art now. Art theft. I have my art stolen all the time, and I currently have my art stolen again that I'm in conversations with somebody who is refusing to take the stolen artwork off of their accounts.
Man, yeah.
What could an artist do in a place like this?
Oh, so if they, let's see, if they're posting it somewhere, you could try to go through whatever website they're posting on. It's
Mm,
probably against, I would guess, again, I'd have to read it, know for sure, but I would guess that it's against that site's terms of use to
okay.
use stolen materials. That tends to be in most terms of use. You can't use stuff that's stolen from someone else. So you could try to get their account taken down through that kind of route. Now I know that can be frustrating as not all websites are very responsive to those kinds
Mhm.
of requests. Um, if it is something again that that person is making money off of, I would call a lawyer. There might be some action there that you could take. It might look like a cease and desist letter. That might be scary enough to get him to knock it off. Um, the next steps from there get a little more complicated and a little more messy, but depending on depending on the value of the art that's stolen, that value meaning, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, not like our emotional value to it, which is important, but the courts don't care
Yeah.
quite so much. But if that's something that was a merch design you were going to sell, and now its value has been lessened because that design is out there, or they've taken it and they've put it on merch, and now they're making merch sales using your art. That's money that some of that might be rightfully yours. So at that point, then we might be in that, like I was talking about, the contingency fee world, where
Mhm.
you might have a lawyer who could help you try and try and recover some of what you're owed.
You know, next time this happens to me, I'm gonna hit you up because I've been threatening
Absolutely.
everybody, being like, "I know a lawyer." I did not know a lawyer prior to today. So I was like, "I know a lawyer, and I will call them and get you in trouble." I was pulling it straight out of my butt, but now I do know a lawyer. So next time it happens, I'll be like, "Jess, please, please, I need a cease and desist. I need to get them to
Call me,
stop."
call me anytime. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Another one. So this one, it's gonna. I'm sorry. You're gonna hit me with the. It depends, but in this creator space as well, what if somebody ripped off somebody else's content? Like, absolutely blatantly, this is not in fair use whatsoever. They literally like, I've had this happen to me and other creators have had it happen where people would take it, rip somebody's content absolutely word for word, no scripting and no movement change either. All of the scenes are the same. YouTube thumbnail was the same. Would a creator, the original creator, have some realm to pursue something legally because of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, art theft, intellectual property theft, it's no joke. I mean, if you think that someone has ripped you off moment for moment, right? Like you said,
Mhm.
line for line. Um, yeah, I mean, if you it's again, it is going to depend because whether or not the video you made in the first place is going to like have recoverable damages. That's what we call, it's basically money that you're owed damages. Um, that's gonna be situation to situation, but certainly from like a theoretical legal principle
Mhm.
standpoint, yeah, that would be a form of intellectual property theft.
Got it. It happens so often at the creator world, which honestly, like, really sucks. Curious, because this was mentioned earlier in chat, and I was curious about your opinions. What are your thoughts on Pal World and how they are extremely heavily ripping off Pokemon art?
Yeah, Pal World is interesting, and I would say at this point I am very curious to see what Nintendo does. I'm
I wanna
curious to
see
see if
Nintendo sue them.
they I I I could be here for a little battle. That could be
Mhm.
fun to watch. If that does happen, I'm going live every day to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be tearing that apart.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, so I mean, it's tough. I saw a thread on Twitter that was sort of going like PAL to Pokemon comparison of
Mhm.
the Pokemon that they think was ripped off to
Yeah.
become the PAL, right? Um, and there was some that felt like a stretch because at the end of the day, there is room for art that is inspired by other art.
Mhm.
But there were some that were like, "Ooh, Uh-oh, that's
Yeah.
looking a little too familiar.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if Pal World is working with anyone in legal. I don't know if they have an in-house legal team or if they have outside counsel or if they're just flying just the dev team. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Um, but it will definitely be interesting to see. I think there is absolutely a possibility that Nintendo has some room for a claim. The issue is whether that is worth the legal costs
Yeah.
because pursuing legal action can be really costly. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no guarantee that you're going to get back as much as you spend. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think there is definitely some evidence of more than inspiration at
Mm.
work. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the developers of Palworld has also been notorious for heavily referencing other artwork. They allegedly had created a separate game, forgot the name of it, that was extremely heavily referencing Hollow Knight, down to the art
Interesting.
style, the storyline, everything. So
Oh,
I
I
would
think I
have
saw that.
yeah, so would like a track record of just suspiciously heavily referencing other people's work kind of like get them in even more legal trouble than if Palworld was just their own creation, or is it kind of like a separate thing?
Most likely gonna be a separate
Okay.
thing. Yeah, I mean, unless if they were ripping off the same company over and over again, then sure, now that company is gonna have more to stand on, right?
Mhm.
But if it's unfortunately, if it's different companies,
Yeah.
each claim is gonna be tied to you can only bring a claim that has to do with your rights. You have to have rights in the intellectual property you're arguing
Okay.
about. So Nintendo wouldn't be able to go say, "And look, they're also taking from Hollow Knight." I mean, would it maybe come up in court? Could I see it as uh, as demonstrating some kind of pattern? Uh, Maybe, and I only say that just because I'm not a litigator. I don't spend time in court, and so I don't want to speak
Mhm.
for what they do, and whether that would come up. But certainly, as far as like bolstering Nintendo's claim or contributing to Nintendo's damages that they could recover,
Mhm.
that's not going to have an
Okay.
impact.
You know, you give, like, the best lawyer answers. There's a lot of, like it's like, "I can't say because legally" it's like, "Oh, wow, this is all stuff that, like, I need to incorporate into my speech," because sometimes people take what I say, like, verbatim, and I'm like, "Wait, no, not quite." But I didn't cover my bases well enough, so
Yeah, law school is basically 3 years of learning to cover your bases, so
yeah, that's insane. So,
yeah.
going back to the creator questions that we were talking about, like, after we talk about Power World and stuff, are there any clauses in a contract creators should be sure to have, and clauses they should really just kind of like, "This is super sus."
Good question. I would say if you see name, image, and likeness, if you see that
Okay.
phrase, name, image, and likeness, if you see that come up, that should be a clue. Oh, I need to read this part carefully.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily that it should or shouldn't be in there, but that's a portion you're gonna want to really read with a fine tooth comb. Then the other ones that come to mind, if you see the phrase work made for hire, that's an indicator that you are signing away your rights to whatever IP you're creating. So let's say you get hired as an artist to create a character design for a new game. If you see in your contract this is a work made for hire, there's going to be other language in there too, right?
Mhm.
That bulks this up, but that phrase should be a clue to you. Ooh, I think that they want to own the rights to this when I'm done with it, which might be totally fine, right?
Yeah.
If you're designing it for their game, you're probably going into it with the mindset of, "Oh, this isn't for me. I'm not going to use this. This is for them." But it's just important to know that that's what you're doing because let's say you incorporate into that design something that you use in your own characters for your own work. Well, you might have accidentally just handed over the opportunity for them to turn around and say, "Hey, get rid of your other work." And you don't want that to be the case.
Oh, could companies legally do that if it was work that you've created prior to being with that company and it incorporated certain elements, I don't know, some tip random element, and then you then used it in artwork that was created for a company where you were hired under the work made for hire clause, they could come for you for your previous artwork that contained it?
Yeah, it depends, right? I
Okay.
guess it's annoying of me, I know, it depends. So sometimes you'll see in contracts, carve outs for what we call prior inventions.
Okay.
So you might see a carve out that says, okay, this work already exists and it features these crossover things, and I'm going to make it really clear in this contract that I own what I own and you own what you own, and we're going to define that super clearly.
Okay.
The issue comes up when it's not defined clearly. That's
Mm.
where the gray is. The gray is the scary area. So I would say the big thing is, again, it comes back to asking lots of questions. Make sure you really understand what you're signing. And if you see something like work made for hire, make sure it's really clear what you're giving rights to. That you're giving rights to this specific character in this exact moment, right? Not any of my work that has ever featured somebody with wings. I don't know.
Yeah. Got it. Another contract question. So you mentioned name, likeness, and I forgot what the last word was, but like
Image. Mhm.
image, yeah, essentially owning a creator's likeness. What does that entail? And when should creators get concerned with like additional things, like in perpetuity or for X amount of time?
Mhm. Yeah, timeline, that's gonna be one that you wanna look at. And the tricky thing is some of those words can seem scarier than they are.
Mhm,
Um, so say, for example, you are gonna host, a cooking series,
mhm,
on a brand's YouTube channel. Um, they're going to want the rights to your name, image, and likeness in perpetuity because they're going to want to be able to use those videos that you make for them for whatever they want to do forever, right?
mhm.
So I would say there, the big thing to look for would be more about how is future use defined? So are they able to make derivative work? That's a phrase to look for, derivative
Okay.
works. Are they able to take what you made and edit it and post it? Or do they have to take it exactly as you give it to them? That's it. Are they able to take a still from it and go make marketing materials, right? These are all very reasonable things that they might want to go do. But it's important to find that balance in the contract. You want the brand to be able to do what they need. You are trying to make something right that gets seen by a lot of people, ideally.
Mhm.
Um, but you want to make sure that that use is cabined to being related to the original purpose of the contract.
Okay. So how would wording for covering that base look like?
I'm gonna be annoying
Okay.
again. It totally depends. It's
Mhm.
gonna depend. Yeah. At that point, I would say call
Contact a
me,
lawyer.
call another lawyer. Yeah.
Got it, got it. This is something that's happened a lot in the, like, contract negotiation phase, happened to me, happened to other people, but it's where something was promised in verbally slash and or in writing that was then not delivered in the contract. So it was either intentionally or unintentionally omitted from it, and then the creator signed it. Would the creator then have any right to kind of go back and be like, you promised essentially this X thing and I have it in writing, but the contract didn't contain it.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. I mean, there's this thing, it's called the four corners doctrine, and it's this idea that what makes it into the four corners of the piece of paper, that's what's in. Um, Especially when it comes to things that are verbal. I mean, the big thing, you'll hear lawyers say it all the time. If it's not in writing, it's not real. And if it's
Mm,
not on the paper that you signed, it's also probably not real. So it's really important to make sure that if there's a key term or some part of the deal that's important to you, read that contract carefully. Make sure that it is in the paper that you sign.
got it, got it, got it. Yeah, I feel like that happens very often in esports too, where people are promised said thing and they're told to do X thing in promise of Y, and they will do their end of the bargain, and the company will just drop them or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's hard. And it's not that it can never be remedied. I mean, there are situations where a verbal deal will be enforced, but it's rare, it's hard to prove, it's expensive to argue about.
Mhm.
Um It really just the best way for creators to protect themselves is to make sure that what they want is in the document that they sign.
Got it. That's great. Um, Another question. So let's say a creator were to be interested. This also travels a little bit into the realm of taxes, but a creator is interested in hiring somebody for some work, either for logo design, for editing, etc. How can the creator legally go about doing this?
Sure. So again, call me. Call another lawyer. Doesn't have to be me. Call a lawyer. That's gonna be always a good step. But there are resources out there. I would say an underutilized resource is your state bar association. They can't give you legal advice,
Mhm.
but your state bar association, that's the association that governs the lawyers in your state. And they might have on their website, they might have sample contracts. That's
Mm.
not uncommon. So that can be a good place to start. It's not necessarily going to cover everything that you need. And again, it's always best to have someone legally trained looking at it. But then at least you're not going from scratch. You might be
Mhm.
able to find a template or some kind of a sample contract that is going to at least be a good starting point for you.
Got it, got it. I have another question that's not necessarily, like, creator related, but I have seen well, basically, there was, like, a true crime story I listened to that had this, but essentially, like, the contract was signed to where the labor would start on X day,
Mhm.
let's say hypothetically, today, the 22nd. But then the company actually started their labor early. So they started their employment for that person maybe on, like, the 20th. Would that invalidate the contract because the company was then working kind of outside the realms of it?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. Again, it's gonna
Yeah.
depend. It's good. There's gonna be a lot more facts that need to be known to know for sure, um, but no, I mean having something signed to start one day and starting 2 days early, you're probably not invalidating the entire contract
Okay.
for that.
Got it, got it. These are just, like, little hypotheticals that I came up with that I thought a lot of creators would be
Yeah, I
interested in.
feel like I'm back in law school. I'm getting hit with the hypos.
I know, it's like, what is this possible? It's just like, I was like, I don't wanna be, like, too vague with what I'm asking, you know? But after going through these questions, etcetera, I do wanna open the floor to chat because I'm sure a lot of people had questions, and a lot of people did have questions that I was ignoring that I will go back to go check real quick. So if you guys have questions, for Jess, drop them in chat, and I'm gonna go scrub through this for
Oh,
some new things. Okay,
yeah,
there was a
I'll
question, do you
mhm.
operate outside of US law? As an
I
EU
do
law,
not.
maybe? Okay,
I do not, no. Um, there that's one of the interesting things about being a lawyer is,
okay,
the geographic restrictions, right? So, there are some situations where you're dealing with law outside of the US. The ones that come to mind for me are like data privacy.
mhm,
Like US lawyers will advise clients, especially like video game developers, they'll advise them on privacy law issues if that game is going to be sold in the UK
okay,
or in Europe, right? Going to be subject to overseas data privacy laws. Um, but
mhm.
generally speaking, your lawyer is going to be operating within not only the laws of the country, but the laws of the state that they're in.
Okay, got it, got it. Somebody asked, Scar asked, "What happens if you give credit and still use their content in a highlighted channel?" So I think they're going into, like, the fair use situation again. Does giving credits kind of, like, I guess, alleviate some of the legal troubles they might get into for yoinking somebody's content?
It can. There
Okay,
are. I'm so sorry. It depends, but it's in my phrase of the night. It depends. Um, there are situations where credit is sufficient,
okay,
but there's more questions that would need to be asked to figure out. Are you crediting correctly? Uh, is the type of use that you're doing is credit sufficient to cover you? It is going to depend a little bit, but I would say that crediting definitely doesn't hurt. Does
got
not
it.
hurt to give credit where credit is due.
So you mentioned like, are they crediting correctly? What would a correct credit look like? And to be a little bit more specific, let's say this is a React YouTube channel and they're reacting to a compilation of TikTok videos. And how would correctly crediting in this scenario look like?
Sure. I mean, in that case, if your use is transformative enough that we're entering into like the fair use territory, then crediting is going to look like in an ideal world on screen when the that you're reacting to is up on screen, the creator's tag is
Mhm.
on screen as well. And then in the description with timestamps. I would say those are two probably like best practices to employ.
Okay.
Um, those would be the two places that I would definitely include credit.
And then what about for a TikTok video where somebody is just they're reacting transformatively and it is just one person's clip under it?
I would still say the same. I would
Okay.
still put it in the description and on the video if possible, because not everybody's gonna read the description, and you want to be able to argue that um, you made it very clear that this is not your content and that you're reacting to it and
Okay.
that you're not stealing.
Got it. Speaking of the transformative fair use in terms of Reacts, Impact had a question that I think is very interesting. A lot of people have a lot of like kind of debate about SSS Sniper Wolf. Like are you familiar with their content?
I'm very
Yeah. Would her reacts be classed as transformative contents and fall under fair use or maybe not so much?
That's kind of the big debate right now. I
Okay.
mean, less so in this exact current moment, right? A couple months ago, there was the big Jax Films,
Yeah, yeah, that big drama
yeah,
thing.
Sniper Wolf drama.
Uh-huh.
And if you ask Jax Films, he's going to tell you over and over again that's not fair use.
Yeah.
He's not a lawyer, but he's been in the content creation game for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, I think he's got a point. I mean, I can't say one way or the other for sure, but I think Jax Films has a very good point that it is pushing the envelope of fair use to call those types of reactions fair use.
Got it, got it. The wording
A
for
very
tr
lawyerly
yeah,
answer.
I was gonna say, in the back of my mind, I was so impressed. I was like, "Wow, this is, like, the best lawyer answer I've heard. Whoa." But, treading into transformative then, how could somebody who maybe was making content in a similar realm to Sniper Wolf in terms of the level of React, how could they take it to another level to make it transformative?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a there are different things that are going to be looked for to determine if it's fair use. And so in that kind of transformative question, I mean, really, I think what you want to be asking yourself is, am I adding value here? Am I adding
Okay.
something new here? Am I offering an insight that the original creator didn't include? Am I expanding on what they said and adding my own knowledge or my own research or information? Or my own
Mm.
anecdote, even, right? Am I adding my own content in some way that is beyond oh my God, that's crazy, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
not to poke too much fun at Sniper Wolf, but we want to do a little bit more than that. So I think that would be the big question to ask yourself while you're creating anything in that kind of React content world is, am I adding value here? Am I doing something different? Uh, One thing to look at is, am I using the video in its entirety, uninterrupted, no pauses, no interjections? I'm just playing the whole video and sitting there and going, whoa, like that's not really transformative. You're, again, going to be situation to situation, but you're probably in a better boat if you're stopping the video at different parts, if you're only using part of it.
Mhm.
Um, if you're using a little bit and then talking about it, discussing it, bringing some new idea, something new to the table, then maybe you watch a little more, pause, talk about it, react a little more. Um, that's going to look better than just you're here, the video's here, it's just running in its entirety while you sit and watch it.
Got it, got it. That's really helpful. Honey Buns had a question. What kind of lawyers should content creators look for? Is there a certain title or any general lawyer would be okay?
That's a great
Mhm.
question. Um, I would say there are a couple different routes you could go. there's an argument to be made that an entertainment lawyer might have experience that is relevant. They're going to be more used to more traditional forms of media like movies, TVs, things like that, but
Mhm.
they're going to have a lot of really relevant knowledge. An intellectual property lawyer, that might be a phrase that you look up, intellectual property attorney. Um, I mean, you could go if you're from maybe a smaller town and you're not going to have access to like a big city with lots of different highly specialized lawyers, you're going to want to be looking for a contract attorney. That would be kind of the really big umbrella is just contract attorney.
Okay.
Um, you're not, you're not going to want to find a criminal attorney. Uh, they're, I'm sure, brilliant and highly specialized in what they do, but it's just not going to be relevant to what you're doing.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I would say intellectual property is a phrase I would throw in there. I wouldn't be opposed to looking for an entertainment lawyer if they if they have modern relevant experience.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I would say those would be kind of the two places I'd go. And then I don't know a ton of people that are calling themselves content creator attorneys. I am calling myself a content creator attorney.
I like that
So,
branding, honestly, 'cause without a doubt, as a content creator, it's like, "Oh, cool. I know exactly what you're looking for your clientele, people like
yeah,
me."
exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Got it. Thank you for that. Impact had another question I think is also really great. What is the legal advice when you get death threats or violence threats and hate in comments? At what point can you legally do something about these?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Anything in that kind of like cyber threat space, that's when actually you might be talking to a criminal attorney.
Okay.
Um, that might move you out of the content creation space because that has really less to do with you as a content creator and more to do with you just as a person being threatened.
Mhm.
Just like if someone who was working at a bank had a stalker and that stalker was sending them death threats, they would contact the police, right? I mean, they would
Mhm.
get a criminal attorney involved. Um, so at what point, I mean, again, unfortunately, like lawyers are tend to be a pretty cost prohibitive world.
Mhm.
So I would say again, always better to ask if it's not something where legal action can be taken, there might be a different route. Again, my mind goes to trying to work with the platform to get that user banned, but I know that it is so easy to just make a new account and continue to harass. So there are definitely lawyers who, like, I know a lawyer who has made his career in going after hackers, video game
Mm.
hackers. Video game leakers, right? People who are hacking in and leaking information early from video game companies, or um, people who are hacking and cheating in games. They have figured out how to use a cheat to
Mhm.
level up really super fast, and then they're turning around and selling um, that high leveled account, even though they
Mm.
didn't come by it honestly. That's an area of the law. Um, so it's one of those things where there are more niches out there than you think.
Okay.
And that's where asking questions just really is going to be helpful because you might not come to the right attorney in the first conversation, but I've never met an attorney who isn't willing to offer some kind of reference, some kind of, ooh, I might try to look this direction. I might try to talk to this type of person.
Okay. Going into being a little bit more specific in this scenario, because I had a friend that went through this. Would Sorry to put more hypotheticals on you. Would this potentially be a space where they could pursue legally? So basically, this person has somebody they do know in person, but this IRL friend supposedly has been harassing them online. They've been doxing them in their own Twitch streams. They've been going into their when they're streaming in Discord, they'll hop in the call and dox them repeatedly, as even after being told no, even after going through Twitch and Twitch banning them, and they just made a new account. Would at this point there be some like legal pursuit that could happen to this IRL person they know through all this harassment?
Potentially. I'm not familiar
Okay.
enough with that area of the law to say for sure. Um, but there certainly are attorneys who oh sorry, did I my stream unmuted. Sorry, I was
Oh,
doubling my
it's all
audio
good.
for a second. Um, there certainly are attorneys who like they help with IRL stalkers, harassers. The police might need to get involved, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it can get very real very fast for sure. So in that case, if it's feeling like it's a health and safety issue, again, it's always better to ask. Um, Something that I might recommend that someone in that situation look into is the phrase legal aid and then their
Mhm.
city. That's where I would start.
Okay.
If you're in a bigger city, for sure. If you're in a smaller town, I would probably find your like nearest big-ish city, and I would search the phrase legal aid city,
Mhm.
um, because there are often resources out there that are a starting point, sort of a directory of, okay, here's the problem I'm having. Who might be the type of attorney I go talk to?
Got it, got it. Impact has another question that somebody else virtual is also interested in. How should a content creator go about trademark protection regarding their own content? Should they protect their logo right away? How can they check to see if their logo or branding is maybe too similar to other people? Can you even protect your username because it's part of your likeness?
Hmm.
Sorry, that's a lot
That's
of
a
questions.
No, no, no. That's those are all great questions.
Mhm.
So there are specific trademark attorneys who they make their whole career in just trademark issues.
Okay.
Um, so I would say if you're a bigger creator and you can afford to talk to an attorney, I would talk to someone who's an expert in trademarks. Um, if you're a smaller creator and you're just starting out and you want to just see if your trademark is too similar to someone else's, I mean, there is a publicly accessible trademark database that you can search, but it's a pretty outdated website. And I don't know how user friendly it is for that idea of like, oh, I want to see if someone else has something just like mine. I mean, you certainly could search to see if like a phrase that, or not a phrase, but like a name you were planning on using, if that's already trademarked and
Mhm.
in use. Um, but yeah, so the best way to go about it again is an annoying answer, but it's going to be ask a trademark attorney or ask an intellectual property attorney.
Got it, got it. Virtual has a follow-up question where there's like websites being like, trademark my stuff. Do those websites work?
Oh, that that really is going to depend. I don't want to say that all of them are a scam, but I would say keep your wits about you.
Okay.
Um, because I would bet, I don't know for sure, but I would bet that there are at least a few out there that are just going to take your money and not actually do anything legally binding. But there might be a service out there that does help businesses with their trademark process.
Mhm.
And that very much could be legit. But I would say most of us in this digital age, I think, have a pretty decent nose for scams.
Okay.
So I would say trust your gut. If it feels fishy, it might be. If it feels legit, I mean, try and do your research as best you can. Look into the terms of use, see what your kind of recourse might be if you go with this company and then it turns out later that they were scamming. I mean, it's tricky, but I don't know. I'd have to look at the individual websites. I don't want to say that it's impossible.
Mhm.
It's not impossible that those websites are genuinely registering your trademarks. Um, there could be absolutely a legal team that's vetting and properly submitting trademark applications, but I would say there are probably also websites out there that are scamming.
Got it. So if a creator were to look to register their trademark, do you just recommend they go to an actual trademark attorney to Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing is and again, like maybe I've just been really lucky with the attorneys I've met in this intellectual property space, but I the attorneys that I know, if it was the type of thing that they could help with, they would help.
Mhm.
If it was the type of thing that they could help with, but there's a way that you can do it yourself that's going to cost you less and get you to the end result, they're going to be honest with you. They're going to tell you,
Okay.
"Oh, you could go do it this way." Um, but again, maybe I've been lucky and I've worked with only honest attorneys, but that's been my experience so far is that people generally want to help.
That's awesome. Goddess Lynn has a question that I also like. Do I have to register my logo and name, or since it's my own creation and I can prove it, is it mine anyways?
Ooh. Man, we're getting into the weeds here. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna hit you with another it depends, because there could be a situation where your use is consistent enough, that you have a claim to it being an established logo, but your safest bet will be registering.
Got it.
Also, that really is my brother who's in chat, who's
Oh,
saying
okay.
I'm Jess's brother. That really is him. I just
I
saw
was
that message
ignoring
and I was
him
like,
because I was
she
like
probably thinks that this is just some troll. That really is my
yeah.
brother.
Okay, because I was
Hello,
like, "You
hello,
didn't say
brother.
anything this whole time?" So I was like, if
Uh,
Jess doesn't say
I just
anything,
saw it
then
now. No, I just saw it now.
okay.
Hi,
I'm
brother.
so sorry.
Please ask her if a Santa Claus is necessary in every contract, if it can be left out of certain
He asked
contracts.
that, by the way, like 4 times, I think.
So funny. Sorry. I
Oh.
just saw your message. No, yeah, you're gonna wanna get a Santa Claus in every contract. That is a must-have at all times.
Another question. Well, this gets into a little bit of the well, I have 2 questions. Oh my god. I have so many questions for you. I feel like I wanna hostage you forever. But what about when creators kind of, like, heavily reference existing IP in their current branding? For instance, Pokimane, whose username was based off Pokemon. Could she potentially get in legal trouble for the username that because everyone knows how she originated the name, but, like, she's her own large, like, creator at this point.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. Something like that, I mean, you're gonna be pretty solidly in the inspired by
Okay.
territory. Yeah.
Got it, got it. So, but like, let's say if a creator chooses to use, I guess this would probably maybe like Pikachu as their logo. Would you say that probably
That I would not
crosses?
do.
Okay,
That I would definitely not do. I would not, because Pikachu is haven't checked the database. I would have to assume Pikachu is a trademarked name.
got it.
Um, those rights have already been claimed.
Mhm,
And even if not, it is so well established in the general, not even video game population, just the general population.
mhm.
You would really be asking for trouble, I think.
Okay. Another one this that happened a while back was between I think it was like Khloe Kardashian or something. Basically, like I don't remember which creator, but they made the line like cozy or like coz, but with like an I, and another creator already was using that name as her branding for again, they had very similar products. She used it for 4 years, but she never trademarked it. And then Khloe
Mm.
Kardashian went and trademarked it. I think it
Hmm.
was Chloe. I don't actually remember which creator, so I could be, like, pulling it out of my butt. I don't think it's Chloe,
Sure.
actually, but
But one of them.
yeah,
One of the
but
Kardashians.
a large content creator oh my god, I wanna look this up now just to make sure I get this correct. Coz oh, no, sorry, it's Jacqueline Hill. I'm sorry, I said it
Oh, Jacqueline Hill.
Jacqueline
Oh,
Hill created the line Coz, and then there was another creator, I believe their name was Kaylin, who had a brand for, like, 4 years with literally the same name, who sold, like, basically the same stuff.
wow. Um, yeah, I don't know. On that one, I
Okay.
would have to say, like, I'm very curious about it. I'm definitely gonna go read up on that,
Mhm.
but I definitely don't have an informed opinion on
Okay.
that particular situation.
Wow, this is just, like, reminding me, I need to go trademark my name because it's not trademarked. None of you guys don't anybody beat me to the punch, okay, please, for the love of God. Um, wow, okay. This is, like, super good to know. Impact has a question. Interesting. Also, for context, Impact is German. So,
Okay.
like, the laws in Germany might be different, but they're asking, are there any rules about handling data from your subscribers? For instance, if you have a newsletter, maybe if you collect people's emails, what are the laws
Yeah.
around that in the US?
Yeah, so for that, it's gonna depend. So the US does not have a federal data privacy law. We have consumer privacy laws that lend us some idea of how things might be treated. But at this point in our current legal landscape, there is no one overarching federal data privacy law. So that's going to depend state to state.
Okay.
And different states have different thresholds for whether or not what you are doing is considered data processing. Now, I'm going to give a general answer, and I'm going to slap a big old disclaimer on this that this is not legal advice. I am not your lawyer. I am not Chat's lawyer. Make it very clear. Not legal advice. But there are typically pretty high thresholds that you have to meet. You have to be processing a lot of people's information before you become subject to these laws. Now, if you are dealing with European subscribers, different story. The European data privacy laws are drafted differently. They don't all
Mm.
have thresholds like the US state laws tend to. Um, but typically speaking, if you have informed consent, meaning the person whose data you're using willingly gave you that data for the use that you are using it for, they knew what you wanted to do with it. They said, yep, here's my email address for your newsletter because I want to get your newsletter. That, totally fair game.
Mhm.
If you turn around and sell that batch of email addresses to a marketing company, now we're not looking so good. So if you have user information, but they know why you have it, they willingly gave it to you for that exact reason, and ideally you have somewhere in writing, maybe they filled out a Google form that says, at the top, this is for my newsletter, and you know that if you give me your info, you're going to get emails from me with my newsletter. Something like that, right? Some paper record that you could say, no, 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 look, I have this email because they gave it to me because they wanted my newsletter.
Mhm.
Um, then you're really not you're not running into any problems with that.
Got it. Yeah, somebody was saying, why there's different newsletter platforms. I didn't realize if you had European subscribers that that actually would tread into European data laws
Hmm?
if you then have
Data
their
laws,
emails.
yeah, data laws are I don't want to say entirely because I have not read every single data law in existence, but I want to say predominantly data laws are based on uh, where the user is, not where the content creator or the data collector is.
Got it. Interesting. Another one, this one is like a little bit more generic, but well, I don't think anybody actually asked this one. But a lot of creators host giveaways. How can creators host giveaways in the US in a way that they could legally protect themselves?
Oh, that is a longer answer than I can give in this
Okay.
kind of a format.
Okay.
But I would say I would look up again. This is going to be state to state how the giveaway laws function, because you're going to run into issues of if you're engaging in gambling. That's when you start to cross a dangerous line. We've seen it a lot with loot boxes recently. There's been a lot of buzz in the legal community about are loot boxes gambling? Are loot boxes then governed by the same laws that govern gambling, which would mean kids can't partake.
Mhm.
Um, so if you're doing a giveaway, I would say um, I would try my best to do as best of research as I can about the giveaway and sweepstakes laws of my particular state.
Okay. That is so interesting. Honey Buns asks, how does it work if I'm signing a US based contract, but I am in a different country?
So your contract will say the
Okay.
contract is going to have a part in it if it's a good contract. No shade. No shade to some contracts. But if it's a good contract, it's going to say what the choice of law is.
Mhm.
So there'll be a clause. It's going to be towards the end. It's always down in the what we call the boilerplate, the boring stuff at the bottom that nobody reads.
Mhm.
But somewhere in there, there's going to be a clause that's going to say something along the lines of choice of law or governing law, something like that. It should say in no uncertain terms, this agreement is governed by the laws of, if it's in the US, it's probably going to tailor to a specific state. It's going
Mhm.
to say this is governed by the laws of New York, and any conflict arising under this contract will be handled in the courts of competent jurisdiction in the state of New York, in the New York courts. Um, so for that, it's going to depend on what your contract says. Your
Okay.
contract might say we're going to settle it in Germany, or it might say we're going to settle it in New York. There's got to be some kind of tie. There's got to be some reason, right? If I'm in New York and the person I'm hiring for an independent contractor role is in Germany and I put in Japan, like that's probably not going to hold up because what does Japan have to do with any of this?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, your contract should say.
Okay. Curious though. There that feels personal. I've signed contracts where maybe because I don't have any line of sight into it, but it's like the governing law of some random state. It's like I know they operate out of like X states, and the country, or not the country, the state that is the governing law is nothing related. Maybe an employee lives there, I don't know, right? Is that allowed? Because it's in the US?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's I will say probably,
Okay.
um, because there's probably something behind the scenes there that you're not privy to.
Yeah.
So maybe the owners of the company, if it's privately held, maybe they live in that state, or maybe the company was actually incorporated originally in that state. Their main office is out of California, but they're incorporated in Delaware.
Mhm.
So they might have a tie to the state that you're not seeing. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, and then there are there are ways around. I don't want to say there's ways around because that's not really the correct phrase.
Mhm.
It's more that there are more ways than you might think to establish a connection to a state. So it might seem random at face value, but there actually is some legitimate argument as to why that state makes sense.
Got it, got it, got it. There's many tax loopholes. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it was some tax loophole, something or other loophole that they went through legally that allowed them to put X state. But sometimes I'm just reading the contract and I'm like, what in the world is what? Like, this is very confusing, but okay, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. Oh my god, sorry, I got distracted because my cat was like stretching. He's so
Oh, you're
cute.
so fun.
Help us lawyer speak for tax haven? Yes. Alright, I think that about wraps up the creator questions that we have. Thank you so much for coming on, Jess, because this
Yeah.
interview was extremely helpful, especially something that I think creators could really learn more about. So, if creators are looking to learn more about the law or slash ands they really like you, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Claradacat, Claradacat. You can also find me on Twitch. I go live every Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. I appreciate
Yeah.
you so much for coming on and being so flexible because I
Yeah.
was a little late.
Oh, you're so fine. You're so fine. No, thank you for having me. And again, remember, chat, I'm not your lawyer. I love you, but I'm not your lawyer.